Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, this is a graphic I think a lot of you have seen, but I just want to put it back here in this presentation to show you the 2020 billion-dollar weather disasters according to NOAA. There were 22 separate events, and if we just kind of start west-east, we had the wildfires. We had, of course, the derecho event on August the 10th. There were actually 7 separate tropical systems that cost over $1 billion. Remember, last April on Easter Sunday, we had the severe weather event that hit the south and southeast here with over, 1,200 separate reports of severe weather. The reason why I start here is because I'd like to actually show you the list of the most expensive, and this comes from NOAA and the National Climatic Data Center. And as you look at it, the top events here on the list are actually all hurricanes, and we can see some of the costs here at $170 billion for Hurricane Katrina and $131 for Hurricane Harvey. Now, the reason why I'm showing you this is that we're starting to hear some of the early estimates of the damage that was done by the Arctic outbreak we endured in middle part of February. And there are some early estimates that might even put this here in the top 5 list, maybe even as the second most expensive natural disaster to hit the United States since 1980. And over that time period, by the way, since 1980, the U.S., when you total all of these up, sits somewhere around almost the $2 trillion mark on cleaning up after these disasters. It's just amazing to think back about what could be these top 2 events here in the state of Texas. When you think about it, Hurricane Harvey came in and just, I'll draw it in white here, very slowly meandered right along the coast and dumped well over 50 inches of rain in Houston before moving into the lower Mississippi River Valley and eventually here into the Tennessee and Ohio River Valley. And just to show you, though, the difference between these 2 big disasters for Texas, there's Harvey in 2017, and this is the winds that we had on the 16th of February of this year. And what a difference, right? I mean, it doesn't look like much when you look at it here, but you're not seeing the temperatures that were born on the nose of this large area of higher atmospheric pressure, pushing sub-freezing temperatures deep into the Gulf and down here pretty far into Mexico. In fact, the frontal boundary stretched clear down here into parts of the Caribbean. I just wanted to kind of add some perspective to this as we get started today. Now, thankfully, over the last 24 hours here, things have been relatively benign across the country. We had one system exiting just off the southeast coast. It did bring in some heavier rainfall amounts down here to like the peanut and cotton belt in the southeast. We have seen warm temperatures really emerge here in the northern plains, and we're working on eroding this snowpack that is still in place here in parts of the upper Midwest. You can see the snowpack in the Intermountain West, including the Snake River Valley. I always like to find that here just by looking at the snow at this time of year. But our next system we'll talk about is this one right here. It's coming into California. And there's a lot of indication on where this pattern's going, because as you start to see these lows cutting into California and still see the winds really taking these high-level clouds across Mexico, that's going to be important to us diagnosing where this pattern is going. Because right now it looks like this. Highly amplified jet stream that split. There's a northern branch, and here's the southern branch you just saw with those strong winds. Here is our shortwave later on today that'll be kicking off a low that'll move through Colorado and eventually then dive down here toward Louisiana, and I'll show you what that's going to do. But that split flow in the atmosphere there is leading to a relatively drier time period for many of us across the U.S. and the Canadian prairie here from now all the way through the weekend. This is showing you the next 5 days of total accumulated precipitation. And again, we're just watching that cutoff low go here into the Intermountain West, and it is forecast to dive right back down through the lower Mississippi River Valley. Along the way, bringing in some precipitation to parts of the high plains, including the Kansas, Oklahoma, and some snow in Colorado and other parts of the Intermountain West. But again, for much of the rest of the country, we're going to continue to go through the next 5 days quite dry. For some folks, this is going to be needed right here, especially just to show you the last 7 days of total accumulated precipitation. You can see that from eastern Texas stretching through Tennessee, Kentucky, this region right in through here, some places picking up easily 6 inches of rainfall, some places more than that. And we need some time to clean up after the flood damage in this particular region. There's the rains you did see coming through in the last about 48 hours here that hit parts of the southeast. And here's the beginning of our cutoff low we're going to be talking about. Okay, temperatures first. With the atmosphere and the jet stream pattern kind of split, let's just take a look at how the temperatures evolve over the next few days. Very warm once again in the northern plains of the United States. And as we go forward here from the day on Thursday, let's pause it And just take a look at the difference into Friday. So as the jet stream kind of bulges north into the Canadian prairie and then kind of dives back down here over the east, that's where we're going to be seeing the cooler weather working into the weekend. So this is Friday. If we go from Friday now into Saturday, the differences are just startling here across the country. Look how warm it is compared to normal in the northern plains, but the cooler weather, remember the stronger jet stream winds, the precipitation coming from that cutoff low that heads toward Louisiana, and just the dip in the trough of the jet stream here across the east as all the flow kind of comes back together, keeping it cool there. So we're into the weekend. This is now Sunday, and from Sunday we get into Monday and Tuesday. And look at the widespread warmth through parts of the Midwest. The Great Lakes states, and now it's occupying virtually everywhere east of the Rocky Mountains. But I want to make a point here to show you that once we get into middle of next week, this is now next Wednesday, the divide here in temperatures right around the 100th meridian is kind of indicating to us a pretty sizable change in the jet stream pattern, where instead of those two branches of the jet stream being split, they're actually now kind of merging, and they're going to take off from Southern California all the way through the mid-Atlantic. And that's going to set us up for a pretty active mid-March time period. I would like to point out, though, that the cooler weather you are seeing here is not born on Arctic air. So unlike what we saw in February, the cool down that will be as a result of this, which we're going to see into the middle of the month, is not going to be of the same magnitude of what we just endured. We'll come back to that in just a few moments. One thing I would like to point out, though, and this is a sure sign that spring is on its way, is I want you to watch with me this animation showing you precipitable water. This is the amount of, think about it as the amount of moisture in the atmosphere. And what I want you to see here is watch how we begin to tap into Gulf of Mexico moisture. See it there coming in around the 10th and 11th and 12th, and another plume around the 13th. And that's just saying that we're starting to get the atmosphere back into a configuration where it can draw on those southerly winds and draw on that moisture coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. And we need to see what that's going to do to our weather patterns as we work our way into the second week of March. Now, as we look at our all hazards weather map, it's nice to be able to see one that is not colorful, right, after what we've been enduring. And again, the major players here, we're looking at some wind issues here in parts of Oregon, California. We have issues with red flag warning down here and some stronger winds. And again, this is as this little trough cuts into parts of Colorado and then dives. And we will be watching out for the potential for some stronger storms in this area, as you see by the SPC convective outlook. So why don't we go take a look at this first by running our high-resolution NAM model. This is going throughout the day today into tomorrow, and it'll finish early on Saturday morning. And again, we just watch throughout the day today for the snow here in the Front Range, the rain, possibly some storms in Kansas and Oklahoma, as this low, watch it with me one more time, kind of pulls down farther to the south because it can't push through this big high pressure cell that's here. We will get a little bit of lake effect snow out of this, and you can see that by the time we get into Saturday, we got snow coming here for the Klamath Mountains, for the Cascades, and also here getting down to the Sierra Nevada. And this is going to be the beginning of a wetter time period for the state of California here as we work our way into the second week of the month of March. Now, since I mentioned that we are concerned a bit about the severe weather risk, I just wanted to bring you up to speed on how 2021 shaped up. And let's just take a look at some of our severe weather metrics. This is the number of reports for tornadoes. Now, you can see the line right down here at the bottom kind of telling you where we currently sit. And so far this year, we've had 27 reports. A year ago, we were at 141. And remember, in April, we were going into that extremely active time period in April where we made a huge jump on tornado reports. Now, this is not indicative of how the rest of the season is going to go. We have to really get into March, April, and May when the curve really takes off. And we're going to watch that very carefully this year. When it comes to the number of hail reports, we've had 44 so far this year, and that's been pretty inactive. I think that would actually rank it as the third slowest start that we've had going back to 2005. And so we're right down here. And we'll also look at wind reports. Also, very, very slow start, thankfully, in terms of our severe wind reports. I believe if we look at the data, they're the slowest start and going back to 2005. Now, we are showing you this because I'm anticipating much more activity now that we get into March, April, and May. And it's going to begin like this. I told you where the jet stream was today. You see that it's got this split flow. But as I play this forward, what we notice is these two branches of the jet stream begin to merge a bit as we get into the weekend. So here's the polar jet coming down, the subtropical jet cutting underneath it, the cooler air exiting the east in this trough, the warmth still spreading under the broad ridging here. But as I take you out, look at what happens here. This is now March 8th, getting into March 9th. We bring in very strong onshore flow into California as the polar branch and subtropical branch meet up. And this targets right in across parts of Nevada and Utah. And that wave will move over the Rocky Mountains right here. And at some point, probably on the 10th, getting into the 10th, 11th, and 12th, it'll eject into the Central Plains. And this is almost kind of a textbook setup here to get such a strong wave to push across the mountains and open up here in the Central Plains. Now, here's the thing I want to watch for. Now, we're out there pretty far. We're out a week, and we just see that the flow is in a broad trough. What we have to watch out for are some subtle features in here where the jet stream kind of maybe takes on a bit more curvature that could really enhance the upward or the upper level divergence. And what that all points to is a much more vigorous low that forms during that time period. So to show you what we're watching here through the next week plus, let's flip over to the European model and kind of get this playing. So working the way through the day here on Thursday into Friday, we've already seen through this point. We just saw the low come through and cut farther to the south. Now as I play this forward, let's work our way here into Sunday, now getting into Monday, and as we work our way into Tuesday and Wednesday, the setup is pretty well advertised here. The ridge moving over to North Carolina, the winds quite strong in the central part of the United States coming out of the south. This is the return of that moisture. We can see the deeper trough cutting into the west here. Snow in parts of Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and back into the Great Basin, and then also into California. So this again, it would be Tuesday. We work our way farther into Wednesday now. What we see is that first wave begins to eject right here in the central part of the United States. Now, at this point, we've been watching this very, very carefully because depending on the curvature in the flow of the jet stream, we could be seeing a deeper low than what's advertised by the models right now. Also, just understand there's another pulse coming into California following this as well. So we've got multiple chances with this jet stream pattern. Now, I've been quite keen on figuring out what's going to be happening with this system sometime next Tuesday, Wednesday, even into Thursday. There's still that kind of uncertainty. And I would like to show you what I'm thinking about here. Because 2 model runs ago, we had a pretty vigorous low, which was even bringing snow on the back side of it here through part of the Canadian prairie of Manitoba into Saskatchewan and then into the Dakotas and Montana. This even spread some snow into parts of Ontario. But you remember, when we think about the ECMWF advertising some severe weather, we look for these streaks, right? It doesn't capture convection well, but there's the potential in through this area. This was the run before that. And once again, this one was bringing in big snow here. And what I'm trying to advertise with this is that the position and strength of this next low is not settled. The wave is still way out there in the Gulf of Alaska, and it's going to take time to get here. But I'm watching out for this area for the potential for strong to severe storms once we get out into that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday time frame of next week. The European ensemble is also putting a low down at that time period, but you still see there's quite a bit of spread. But the setup is good. With a high pressure cell here over the east, it pumps in that moisture. And wherever that low ends up forming, that'll help us guide us where to expect this severe weather. I just want to show you that the GFS is also putting down a big low there. While it's not showing you yet the precipitation, it does have the low in place somewhere there around next Wednesday. And even the new GFS V16, the newest version of the GFS, it too has a low getting a little bit farther to the north here around the Red River Valley of the north. But same ridge, open flow. We're going to watch right in through here. Okay, we'll keep a close eye on that and certainly be reporting back to you next week. Now, what about snow? Well, remember, this is an area that we're very uncertain about, simply because we just don't yet know the position of that low once we get out there past the 10th. But the thing that I want you to see is that coming into the Sierra Nevada here, we're picking up a few feet of snow, which is fantastic. We need to do that to build that snowpack back up. And total accumulated precipitation through the next 10 days, I don't want you to take the amounts here and remember them. I want you to see the pattern. You know, as that low does emerge, so it's coming out right like this, we do see that the models are picking up on that corridor as having the most active precipitation pattern and possibilities here. You do see that parts of the southeast are favored over on the drier side of things, as are parts of the northern plains. But again, I'll call this into question here in North Dakota, South Dakota, southern Canadian prairie here, if we might be seeing more snow. But to see this return to precipitation, where we're talking maybe an inch in the valley, upwards of 2 to 3 inches at elevation, and a lot of that being snow, that's a good signal here for the middle part of the month of March. And we could possibly have some more coming as well. You notice that when we take a look at how the beginning of this year has shaped up so far in terms of precipitation ranks, the area that we need to be bringing the moisture in is not only the northern plains and also parts of the southwest, but there are a few pockets that are kind of showing up a bit drier. And I'm going to watch carefully what's going on in the southern plains as we move forward here, and also parts of the eastern Corn Belt and Great Lakes Basin, while the Carolina coast down to Georgia has been extremely, extremely wet. Now, looking at week 2, this is why I say we're not quite done yet. Polar branch is coming in here. Subtropical branch meets up with it, and you can see those strongest winds right in this area. And as a consequence of that, we still expect to see above average precip from California through the Great Basin, and then it's going to also target this region in through here with active weather. Possibly drier on the south side of that. Again, big question marks here on how deep these waves get as to what it returns here to the northern plains of the U.S., where we do need to make up for some deficit in that area. Stretching this out even farther, we're just going to go out here into week 3. You notice that the models continue to hang on to the active pattern that we see here, basically stretching from, to be honest, I'd back this all the way up here, almost to the border of Iowa, Nebraska, cutting right down into this area, saying points to the east of there have better chances of more active weather through the month of March. But we will have to watch the southern plains for issues with drought expansion as we move forward here. All right, let's wrap this up by talking about temperatures a bit here. Over the next 5 days, we've talked about this. The colder air is exiting east, and both models are picking up on that. And extremely warm temperatures for this time of year that are going to be stretching from the Canadian prairie through the northern plains of the U.S. We saw that moved east as we got out to the day 5 through 10 time period, and we see that now firmly established over the Great Lakes Basin and the eastern Corn Belt here. But as I mentioned, we expected with that jet stream pattern adjusting that we're going to see some return of some cooler air by the time we get into about the day 12 through day 15 time period. Now, this does not mean the brutally cold air that we saw. You can clearly see that the source of this is not the Arctic, but it's going to be the shots of cooler air that we mentioned that we thought we could see throughout the month of March here. So this is just kind of an important trend that the models have picked up on here at the end of week 2. From there, just a bit of an explanation, just following up with last week. We talked about how a couple of things needed to happen, one of which would have been the EPO moving negative. This is just the flattening of the jet stream in the Pacific, and it did. It's kind of hovering down here a lot more, which is supportive of this temperature pattern. Plus, with the MJO moving over to phase 1, that would also signal better chances at seeing more normal, even cooler than normal at times, temperatures in the second and third week of March. Okay, I want to finish up with one last discussion on temperature, and then we'll wrap this video up. This region right in through here, I would like for everybody to be watching with me carefully. And the reason why is because we've noticed a trend in the cooling of the waters there over the last several weeks. And if that trend continues as we work our way into spring, I want to bring up an important point here. That trend tends to be correlated with drier conditions, especially early in summer and possibly into the middle of summer here in parts of the Midwest and Central Plains. Now, if the warmer water returns to this area and the La Nina fades, that risk backs off. But the other thing to point out is right now, much of the Atlantic is quite warm. And if the La Nina is around or even makes a return coming back into the fall, this would be another year where we would be concerned about an elevated risk for hurricane activity. But all of that is ahead of us. We'll keep you updated and keep kind of watching this picture evolve so that we can be prepared for what spring, summer, and fall are going to give us. With that, I'll wrap it up there and hope you all have a great weekend. Thanks.